The winter of 1944. 20,000 feet above northern Germany, the sky was a brutal ballet of vapor trails and flashing metal. American B-17 flying fortresses, symbols of defiance, pushed through the thin, frozen air. Their engines roared, wings vibrated with the continuous thud of .50 caliber machine guns. Aboard Miss Liberty II, part of the 381 bomb group, a waist gunner wrestled with his Browning. Jammed. At the worst possible moment, Messerschmitt Bf-10-9s tore through the formation. He yanked the charging handle. Nothing. Tracer fire sliced past. The intercom crackled. Waist gun lost coverage right side. A familiar dread for the engineers listening below in East Anglia. They knew the problem, the potential fix, but this time it had to work in the air, or 10 crews wouldn't make it home. By early 1944, the air war over Europe was a grinding test of will. The US 8th Air Force, operating from airfields across eastern England, launched daily missions deep into Nazi territory. The B-17, the heart of their strategy, embodied both American strength and its limits. Daylight precision bombing, a simple idea, deadly in practice. Commanders believed tight formations and Norden bomb sites could cripple Germany's industry. But daylight meant visibility, and visibility meant savage losses. Hundreds of miles of flak-filled skies, waves of fighters near Bremen, Schweinfurt, Regensburg. Every mission was a gauntlet. The flying fortress was legendary for its toughness. Photos showed planes riddled with holes, control surfaces shredded, engines shot out. Yet somehow they'd limp back to England. But beneath that armor and myth lay countless fragile parts. Fuel lines, oxygen systems, hydraulic turrets, and the bomber's primary defense, the Browning M 2.50 caliber machine guns, up to 13 per plane. When they worked, a fortress was nearly untouchable. When one jammed, it created a fatal blind spot. The Browning had proven itself in every theater, but the frozen stratosphere over Europe was different. Metal contracted, lubricants stiffened, and ammo belts twisted in the constant vibration. Engineers could anticipate these failures, but preventing them all was another story. Life on an East Anglian airfield revolved around the cycle of flight and repair. Before dawn, crews donned their electrically heated suits. After sunset, ground engineers worked under dim lights, inspecting every weapon, every cable. They weren't heroes in headlines, but every successful mission was built on their meticulous labor. The welders, armorers, and mechanics who never let a fault go unaddressed. By late 1943, reports of jammed waist guns, particularly on the right side of B-17s, were a growing concern. Ammunition belts would strike the fuselage during evasive maneuvers, causing misfeeds. Test crews at Ridgewell and Bastogne tried adjustments, feed chutes, rollers, belt angles, but nothing held up at 20,000 feet and -40 degrees. The crisis peaked during the January raids on Brunswick's aircraft factories. Multiple gunners reported identical malfunctions. For the engineers, it was clear a fundamental change was needed. They began improvising field modifications, crafting braces and belt guides from scrap aluminum. Crude, hand-riveted pieces, some still showing pencil marks, but all driven by one philosophy: if it keeps the guns firing, it stays. This mindset, adaptation over perfection, became the hallmark of American engineering during the war. While Germany often prioritized precision, Americans prized speed and flexibility. Every improvement was tested in combat within days. Every failure became data for the next night's work. This culture of innovation under fire would, in time, overwhelm the Luftwaffe's technical advantage through relentless persistence. Back on Miss Liberty II, the crew fought to clear their weapon. On the ground, mechanics at Ridgewell reviewed malfunction reports. Somewhere in those pages lay the pattern that would decide if that plane, and many others, would see another dawn. The airfields of wartime East Anglia were like miniature cities carved into the farmland. From above, they looked identical. 3 intersecting runways, blister hangars, endless rows of Nissen huts. On the ground, they pulsed with activity. Jeep engines backfired in the dark, mechanics smoked beside glowing heaters, trucks rumbled, hauling ammunition and gun barrels packed in grease. The 381st Bomb Group at Ridgewell was one of dozens. Each morning began before sunrise with mission briefings, red lines on maps stretching deep into Germany. As the bombers thundered down the runway, ground crews waited by the control tower, counting the returning aircraft. Every missing plane left an unspoken void. Among these personnel were the ordnance and armament sections, the unsung half of the air war. Their job, ensure every gun fired as it should, not on paper, but in the frozen chaos of combat. Often teenagers from small American towns, machinists from Ohio, farm mechanics from Kansas, auto repairmen from California, they understood tools instinctively. They improvised constantly. In their workshops, the smell of gun oil mingled with the clang of steel. Engineers tore apart Brownings, cleaned them, replaced worn springs, reassembled them in silence. A single misaligned feed powel could mean a dead gunner at 20,000 feet. For every successful mission, there was a night like this. Mechanics bent over benches, finding the flaw before dawn. Their greatest enemy wasn't the Luftwaffe, it was the cold. Oil thickened, metal shrank, ammo belts stiffened into rigid snakes. Engineers experimented with every preheating and lubrication method imaginable. Some warmed belts in makeshift ovens. Others wrapped gun housings in antifreeze-soaked cloth. There was no manual for this. Learning came through loss. By late January 1944, an idea circulated among groups at Ridgewell, Kimballton, and Bastogne. Mechanics noticed right-side waist guns consistently jammed during the first burst when the belt was cold. A sergeant, a former auto mechanic from Detroit, proposed bending radio wire into a guide spring, forcing the belt upward at a gentler angle. It looked crude, improvised, unauthorized. But on the ground it worked. The wire trick, as crews called it, quietly spread through hangars, passed hand to hand, plane to plane. In that atmosphere, engineering and invention blurred. No labs, no patents, only experience, observation, and instinct. A frozen or ruptured gun was disassembled before its engines cooled. Every bullet path, every jammed link became evidence in an unending mechanical investigation. Across the Channel, Luftwaffe pilots observed something unnerving: the resilience of American bombers. Even with entire sections seemingly destroyed, their guns kept firing. German intelligence analyzing wrecked B-17 found homemade modifications, field adjustments, unlike anything in factory manuals. Proof that Americans were changing their machines faster than the Germans could analyze them. That relentless adaptation defined the US approach. Engineers didn't wait for permission. They fixed what failed, then taught others. By the time Miss Liberty II took off for Brunswick, the wire trick had already saved several aircraft, but no one knew that within hours it would face its most unforgiving test. The B-17 was a machine built from rivets, glass, and courage. Inside, the noise was overwhelming. 4 engines, hammering guns, vibrating airframe. For Corporal John Evans, right waist gunner on Miss Liberty II, he was 21 years old. 11 missions in, he knew what a jammed gun meant. He'd seen enemy fighters exploit blind spots. That morning, near -40, frost crystals drifted inside the fuselage. His hands were numb. When his gun seized mid-burst, he reacted on instinct. Pull the charging handle, clear the link, check the belt. Nothing. In those seconds, he felt the gunner's deepest fear. Surrounded by firepower, yet defenseless, a silent corner in a fortress of sound. The Browning M2.50 caliber was the backbone of the American air war. But at 25,000 feet, ammo belt links stiffened, lubricant froze, recoil mechanisms struggled. The ground engineers who installed that wire trick believed it would reduce tension, allowing the belt to flex naturally. A tiny, unseen detail separating life from death. In combat, a B-17 was never alone. Dozens flew in staggered boxes for defensive coverage. Lose one gun, a gap opened. Lose two, the formation faltered. German pilots exploited these weaknesses, targeting the least defended angles. When Evans's gun fell silent, a Bf-109 pilot would instantly notice. The incoming fire that raked the fuselage wasn't random. It was precise exploitation. Americans countered with their best, adaptation under fire. Over the radio, Evans's crewmates called out, "Right side blind." The top turret swiveled to assist. That coordination was the invisible armor keeping fortresses alive. What truly separated the US Army Air Forces wasn't just industrial scale, but the relationship between air crews and engineers. German pilots often met their mechanics briefly. American crews lived beside theirs. They drank, joked, shared losses. Every fix mattered because someone's life depended on it. The wire trick was more than a mechanical adjustment. It was a bond of trust, an engineer's care reaching 30,000 feet into the sky. When Evans wrestled with his jammed gun that morning, he was unknowingly testing the collective work of dozens of minds and hands that had labored through countless nights. By noon, as the bombers turned for home, that trust would be tested to its breaking point. Not just for one plane, but for an entire formation.